Hello, my name is Brian Arnell. I'm with Oklahoma State University. I'm the Precision Nutrient Management Extension Specialist. I typically work in application of nitrogen, phosphorus, and variable rate technologies, remote sensing, and just daily applications of nutrient management across all the crops grown in the state of Oklahoma. However, through my time in this position, I've had an opportunity to really work with and develop mobile applications. So I want to take a little bit of time to give you my background in mobile applications, why I got into this technology transfer, and my thoughts on it and how I've approached it going through the years. So first, where did my first intro into mobile apps come? It was really a request in 2013 for InfoAg, which is a big precision ag conference put on in St. Louis each year now. And I was approached to give a talk on mobile apps. Effectively, a friend that was on the programming committee said, "Hey, Brian, you're in technology. Why don't you talk about apps?" So I thought, that'd be fun. And so that first talk was in July 12th of 2013. It was really impressive because the room was packed, and there was really a lot of good talks around that, but the room was packed with over 400 people, and that really let me see just how much interest and how important the topic was going to be in my future. And for that first talk back in July of 13, I had all of about 52 applications on my iPad. At that point game, I started writing blogs. I started doing more talks. My blogs were getting read a lot. That 2014 timeframe, I gave in upwards of 20 talks that one year just on ag app reviews. Since then, I've done 50 to 60 some odd application talks. Through that time, now I should say, now I have an iPad dedicated to agriculture apps with over 300 apps on it. Since that time, I've released my own apps. So around 2014, the end of 2013, 2014, started developing my own applications. Released my first IO app in 2014, summer of 2014, and had my Android to follow later on that same year. Since that point in time, for the last about 6 years, I've released over 35 apps across both platforms and currently have 5 in progress. I'm going to start off with what I've done on my Ag App talks and my surveys and reviews. I've done a lot of reviews for like mobile app, for scouting apps and just different apps. And I came up with this rule of thumb has been slightly adjusted, but I came up with this rule of thumb back in 2014, 2013 when I started reviewing. And I'm giving you this rule of thumb now so that you can think about it if you're in the process of doing your own apps and building your own apps. Because this has been absolutely important. My rule of thumb has always been, if I cannot figure out the app in 3 minutes, it's gone. Gone as is, it is deleted. That it has no value for me if I cannot figure that app out in 3 minutes. Why apps should make your life easier. Applications should allow you to do a task that takes you a couple minutes in a couple seconds, or a task that takes you several minutes in a couple minutes. It's supposed to make your life easier, whether it's a lookup or a calculation or something. Now, I do extend that out, and because of the complexity, I give GIS and the more intensive mapping apps, I give them a few more minutes. But they're all the same. It should be simplistic. It should be intuitive. It should be easy to understand. I don't want to have to go back and reread the instructions every time I open up an app. That's just frustrating for me. I want it to be easy. I want it to be consistent. I want it to be intuitive. And so that's my old rule of thumb. It's stuck since then. 3 minutes is gone if I can't have it. And so moving on, this is the categories I've stuck with for years. And I just want to share that with the group. See, this is where most of our apps fall in. Not all of them, but most. Weather, news, market updates, and finance. Now, while that's never been my forte, that is always a hit with the farmers and producers. They like those news apps. They like the weather apps and market apps. Shoot, myself, I have 5 different apps for weather because I have one that I like the radar, one that I like the predictive tool, one that I like the it happened, meaning that this is how much rain you had, and one that I like the wind tool. So you have all these different aspects of different apps that come in, market updates. Whether it's a corn or soybean app, that has some interest to me, but my producers in Oklahoma really like those apps that have wheat updates. So you have some regional specificity there. The identification tools, man, for me as a soil fertility specialist, those have been huge for both on my own trend. So nutrient management, nutrient deficiencies, those tools, the old IPNI tool for nutrient deficiencies. Now Ag PhDs have one. Weeds identification tools. Since I'm a soil scientist, the weed ID tools have been huge for me, very helpful. First coming out with University of Missouri was one of the very first apps that had weed identification tool that actually broke down the physiology. Is it a broadleaf? Is it a grass? What's the blade? What's the ligule? And what's the leaf shape? Now you had BASF and Bayer and Monsanto all jumped in with different applications, and now we have some really nice weed identification apps and pest identification apps. Now, one of the challenges with a lot of the pest identification apps is they don't give you a breakdown list to say this is this. I'm looking at a beetle that has this characteristic. A lot of the pest identification tools are, I have a ladybug. What does it look like? So it means that you don't get to look at the morphology to find out what you have. If you don't know what you have, it's really hard to figure it out. Meaning it's more of a, here's a picture of what you have, not, I don't know what I have, here's how I'm figuring it out. Simple calculators, man, those are simple crop calculators, plant population, nutrient removal, refuge calculators. Those are always helpful. Those are usually really big hits. Something that's just a simple calculation, easy to do and a big hit. Seed select, a lot of the seed companies, of course, have their specific apps that you could scan a barcode and find out about the seed. Sprayer Chemical was one of the earliest to come out of those apps that I found early and have hung on to that are extremely important. Fertilizer apps, of course, that's whether it's a manure or how do you do this, the crop tool, so the corn and soybean cropping tool, scouting tools, scouting and mapping apps, much like the Cirrus or EFC, those different applications that help you in your day-to-day mapping. There's a ton of pay-to-play apps out there that if you pay for the app, you get to use it. Now, those pay-to-play apps are often some of the best applications there because it's not a free app, so that means it can be more inclusive. It can have more in the background running, and so there's really opportunity there. Record-keeping applications, then ag resources. There's a lot of magazines, a lot of the societies, different resources you can read into and acknowledge, and universities have those for fact sheets and stuff. So a lot of good categories out there that you'd fill in. And then I'm going to do a shameless plug. Of course, we have those that I've produced, the OSU MPK and OSU apps. We, the DASNR Division of Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources, have been actively producing mobile applications for many years now. Starting with 2013, early 2014 was the first with the Poinsettia Care app and others. So I'll talk a little bit more about that, but just if you ever want to look it up, dasnr.okstate.edu/apps, or if you go onto my blog site, osumpk.com, and search ag apps, you'll see a lot of my reviews for different applications, and it also talks about the apps that I've made. So getting into it, why apps? Why mobile apps? Well, truly, mobile apps, it's low-hanging fruit for extension. I mean, if you've got to think about what an application is, it's something that makes your life a little bit easier, or a decision-making tool. What has extension been doing for the entire time of extension? We've been making tools to help farmers and producers and livestock managers. That's what we do in extension. So we've been basically preparing for the introduction of mobile apps from the time we began. There are so many calculators, spreadsheets, tables, and charts, and decision tree tools, in Excel or some database somewhere or fact sheet. All those can so easily be transposed into a mobile application. My very first mobile application was taking the nutrient management field guide, which was really just a bunch of different crop production sheets, fertility for wheat, fertility for corn, fertility for beans, fertility for hay, and turning it into an application where you could look up, you had this lookup page, or you could put in your soil test results and get a recommendation. Simple calculation or just an image upload on that app. So that was my first foray into the building applications. Now a little bit, how did I do it? So the point of reference is about 2013 and 2014 when I started. So things might have changed now. I haven't looked to see how some of this has changed, but when I first looked at building app, it was off-site. I went to multiple companies in Oklahoma and said, how much is it going to cost me to build an app if I want to do this simple calculator app or if I want to build this? So my first 3 quotes, all the companies said the same thing, that discovery alone was going to cost $10,000 to $15,000. So that doesn't even include any imagery creation, any layout and design, none of that stuff. It was just discovery on making sure they could build the app properly. At that point, I was like, well, I don't have 10 or 15 grand spare, so what's my next choice? So at the same time that I was looking at that, Dr. Bruce Dunn in a horticulture department got a little support to build an app from a database that he and I had been collecting. And he did that. He used that money to hire a computer science master's student to build it. This is where the genius came in. So I was able to help with the process because it was part of my database and his, to get this app called Plant Nitrogen Recommendations app built. And so it really kind of helped me see this process of how did he use a master's student to build an app. Well, soon enough, that app was done. Bruce didn't have any money. That student was needing something to do, so I got thinking, you know what? Let's see how we can roll with this. So, early on, I brought that student over. It worked out exceptionally well. That single student, I was paying somebody to develop apps at about $10 an hour, which is great if you think of on campus, what kids can make on campus, especially then. $10 an hour is $1 or $2 more than most workers were getting hourly pay, and it worked out really well. After a time, though, I really started figuring out the real game because that same student approached me not too long after they were on the program for a little bit, and here was the kicker. So Oklahoma State, if you're a master's or PhD student at Oklahoma State University and you receive an assistantship, so a paid assistantship to go to grad school, the university waives your tuition. Well, the computer science program at OSU is massive. And when we're going in through the graduate school graduation, the computer science program is about 40 to 50% of all graduates coming through. It's huge. It's massive. It takes up a lot. So sheer number of students in the MS program for computer science, they don't have near enough assistantships for all of them. So I adjusted my game plan, and I hired that one immediately as a graduate assistantship. So I adjusted it, and I basically said, if you come on with me, prove yourself in the first semester, produce an app in that first semester, you're working with me as hourly. If you do it well and you do as I expect, I will provide you an assistantship, which waives your tuition, which means not only are they getting paid, and that the assistantship back then was about $17,000 a year. It's gone up significantly since then, but that time is like $1,650, $17,000 a year. And their tuition was waived, which was a big bonus. So these students, I was getting them lining up at the door trying to get in. And so it really gave me a really nice setup for having students. It also gave me a continuous run of students. Working with programmers, it was a real learning curve. One, just to be honest, every single programmer I've ever had hails from India. They've been great to work with. They really know their stuff. For me, it was helpful. I have a basic understanding of computer programming and coding. That allowed me to at least to speak the lingo a little bit. However, 99% of all those programmers I've had over the years, none of them have any understanding about agriculture whatsoever. So just to make the apps function properly, there had to be a level of education on what are they dealing with? Is this wheat variety? Is this nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium? Whatever it is, they needed to have enough background where they could get into it and work with it and understand it, and so that they could identify the mistakes. If you just hand them the code or hand them what they need to do and they don't understand what they're doing as a programmer, they can't identify the errors that they're producing accidentally. So if they know a little bit about the subject matter, it really makes things a whole lot cleaner and a whole lot easier as you move through. I learned how to help with project layout and flow, meaning that I really over the years have really learned how to prepare a document and a plan before I take it to a programmer. The flow, the layout, how's everything going to look? Where do I want certain things? How does it have to react? How many levels am I going to do? Is it going to be data stored on the phone? Do we need to be a server? Things like that. I've also learned very early, have little to no expectations for design. These are not going to be shiny, they're not going to be pretty, but they're going to be functional. And so I am happy to provide a functional application for free that's not pretty. If I want something pretty, I'm going to have to pay for it a lot more, and therefore it can't be a free application. It's also worked out well. So I make the students recruit their replacements. So I've got this constant flow. And I always say, if you've done good, I'm going to have a good review. But if you've done well and you get a good replacement, your review, your stuff that I send out, your letters of recommendation, your LinkedIn profile will be even better if you get me a good replacement. So they do a good job. The problem has become this. When I started in 14 and 15 and 16 doing it this way, I was the only person not in computer science to be offering assistantships. Now it's much more common. Now there's competition, and I'm having to compete for students, and I'll lose them every now and then to somebody that's willing to pay them more than I'm willing to pay them. So it must have been a good idea because people have really kept it on. Now here's another thing I've learned early on. Because I have developed a relationship with these programmers, because I have developed a working understanding of how to manage these programmers, I'm getting on grants. I'm just being put on grants as programming development only because people know I can do it. So right now I have 3 developers hired that are working on applications that I have nothing to do with except for making sure that they're doing their job, communicating with their lead PIs, and are getting a good product out in a timely manner. That's my job. And so really it's, once a month or so I work with the developers, if that much, just to make sure everybody's happy. And that's worked out pretty good for me. I mean, it's helped build my CV. I keep programmers on. Sometimes those PIs have a little bit of extra funds and I'm able to do something of my own. And it's worked out exceptionally well to have that in the system as it is. The shortfalls of the approach, communication. So we didn't have space in DASNR. We don't have an office for programmers for these grad students. So often they work from home. They work at night. So I can't keep track. Are they really working? Are they getting anything accomplished? I paid them this month. How much work did you get? So it's really hard to keep track of where they're at and really sometimes keep them motivated. Often they don't know the right questions to ask because they don't know the science well enough or they don't know the calculation, and so that slows things down. And there's that. Technology-wise, I've had to provide AirBook Pros to a lot of them, so I've bought 3 or 4 over the last several years, kind of in rotation, where I get a new developer, I provide them one, and I get one back until that AirBook goes bad. Beta testing has always been a challenge on technology, especially if it's an Android app. I don't have Android, I only have iOS. OSU has now invested in some beta testing technology that's going to really help me out as I go forward. The continued efforts in storage has been a huge issue, especially when I was going rogue and doing this on my own. So iOS and Android updates, every time there's an update, things crash. Now that I got 35 apps out there, things are crashing a lot every time something goes out. That old code, where was the code reposited when it was just really me? Was I keeping it properly? Did that thumb drive or that USB or that hard drive go bad? That was a big deal. And then every now and then, programmers don't work out, and I get one halfway through an app and they go AWOL. Or they finish an app, they graduate, that app crashes, and I can't get a hold of them to help out the new programmers fix it. So a lot of times we've had an app that's half done, programmer leaves, the replacement has to start from zero because they didn't understand the way that app was originally coded. So the continuity there can be a huge challenge when using graduate students, because it's not one person for 8 years. It's not even a person for 2 years, because a lot of this time I'm picking them up their second or third semester as a master's student. Thank goodness we've really had a great backing of recently with Dasnar having a app person now, so I can send this. There's one person in the Division of Ag who's helped to be responsible for our applications, who's managing the repository, helps manage updates, and does a lot of that stuff, which really takes off the pressure from me to worry about continuity, to worry about code repository, to worry about updates. So that's been really huge. So if you could get your college or division on board, man, that makes all the difference in the world. Is there room for more? So I said my phone has I have an iPad dedicated to agriculture apps. There's over 350 on it. So the space has a lot in there. There's a lot out there. But I still have people asking for certain tasks that makes their life easier. So my question to you is, if you're thinking about building an application, is there demand? Is there already 30 apps that will do it? Or is there 30 apps that will do something similar, but you have a regionally specific task that needs to be done? Then yeah, don't expect 1 million downloads. I mean, if you got some awesome apps, you'll get it. But I'm pretty happy with a couple hundred, because I'm looking at this. I'm looking at impact per dollar. So if I can get an app out for anywhere between $5,000 and $6,000, I'm looking at the impact per person and what it would take to do a program, to do this or that, and how that would be adopted if I had to send out remember when we used to send out floppy disk or sell USBs? Where's my investment? So I need a couple hundred downloads and some regular use to justify my input into it. Try to develop apps that come from requests or comments. It goes right back up. Is there a specific need that you can address that makes somebody's life just a little bit easier? Don't be afraid of going to your computer science. Our first app, to build that nitrogen app, we put a flyer up in the hallways of the computer science building, said app developers wanted. Printed out 4 pieces of paper. Since that point in time, I've had over 25 developers on my program. 4 pieces of paper. It got the ball rolling. Ever since then, it's worked out well. Try it. You're going to have failures. I have had a lot of failures. I've had successes. It's usually about communication. Picking the right person and making sure they stay on task is one of the biggest challenges. I really appreciate this opportunity to share my experiences with the group. If there's anything I can ever do or any information you need, please feel free to reach out with me. I would love to visit more about this topic and share any of my experiences in more detail. There's my email, my social media contact. Just reach out or check me out. Again, thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope everybody's doing well.